Hey guys, good day, and thanks for coming back to the next video. Hey, yesterday I put up a video that was titled 7 Good Years and 7 Bad Years, the Daniel 9:27 covenant. And in that video I spoke about these two cows that were born with a number 7 on their head back in September of 2014. And I showed how, just looking at this information, I mean, obviously this is a God event. This is not a coincidence. This is God telling us that these two sevens, about this dating in this September 24th time frame, really point to what I would say is the 7 good years and the 7 bad years. Um, I have similar information to describe from some other areas of the Bible. And guys, look, I'm doing this because this information just all of a sudden out of the blue seems clear as a bell. But for years and years and years, we could never quite get this figured out. So if we use the words of Jesus and the words of Moses from Psalm 90, we can come to an interesting conclusion, something that was never looked at before until we got past 2018. So the words of Jesus in the Olivet Discourse, starting at verse 32, Jesus says, "From the fig tree," we know that Israel is the fig tree. Now, Israel, Judah, actually there's two fig trees if you've seen some of my videos. But Jesus says, "From the fig tree, learn the lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things," that would be Israel reborn, "you know that it is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." Now, I've seen lots of arguments about which generation. Some people say that Jesus was referring to the generation of his disciples who he was speaking to, or was he speaking about the generation that would see all these things that are spoken about in Matthew 24. When you go back to Matthew 24, it's the signs of the end of the age. I know most of you people are probably aware of this discourse. It's called the Olivet Discourse, where he speaks about all these events. So it seems pretty clear that when you look at this, that this generation is this end time generation that's going to see all these things that he spoke about in Matthew 24. So he says, "Truly I say to you, this generation, this end time generation, will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But according to that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." That day and hour. It doesn't say season or time frame. So we can take this information from Jesus and we can surmise. We can't make an exact calculation on this, but we can take his clues and combine it with the words of Moses. Now, Moses is described as writing Psalm 90. So I'm going to have a couple more verses here for Psalm 90 that give us a sense on what's being said here. I didn't realize this till tonight when I was looking at it. So when we read Psalm 90, it goes like this: is, "For all our days pass away under your wrath. Okay? We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life," which is a generation. Remember, Jesus said this generation. "The years of our life are 70. Let me stop there for a minute. So for many, many years, people looked at this verse and said, 70 years. 1948, when Israel became this sprouted leaves thing up here, that Jesus' clue, right? You had 70 years, you get to 2018. Well, 2018 came and went and nothing happened. So out goes that logical assertion. That didn't work out. But let's keep reading. So he says, "The years of our generation are 70, or even by reason of strength, 80. So the generation could be 80 years. Yet their span is but toil and trouble." So maybe it goes like this: the span of our life, of their life, is 80 years for those who have to toil and experience Jacob's trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and your wrath? Remember when you read Revelation 6, that's when God's wrath comes. The bowls, the trumpet judgments, that's all God's wrath. So who considers the power of your anger, your bowls and trumpet judgments, according to those who to the fear of you? So teach us to number our days, that we may get our heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? Have pity on your servants. So when you think about this, Moses is writing this, what, 3,300 years ago? And he's writing as if this Psalm 90 is speaking to today. Return, O Lord, how long? That's what all of us have been saying now for the last, 5 or 10 years. Return, O Lord, how long? Now, why would Moses write that 3,200 years ago? It doesn't make any sense. Why is he speaking about the Lord returning? He never came to begin with. So this, to me, this Psalm 90 verses 99 through 13, this is for us now. Your wrath, Jacob's trouble, okay? Teach us to number our days. So what does all this mean when you look at this now with new light? When we put the 80 years in here and we go from 1948 to 2028, there's that 2028 again. Remember, we came up with that last night, this 2028 stuff. The 7 good years, the 7 bad years. That's what we had last night. So here we go with another angle at this. We see the same exact thing. And we go and we look at the Daniel 9:27, covenant of the Antichrist, the strengthening of a covenant with many for 7 years. And we go backwards. We get this 2021 to 2028. Now, it says 7-year tribulation. That's the vernacular. I don't know if I look at it like that. I think the tribulation is seals. Well, Jesus defines them as seals 1 through 5, but that's a different discussion. But anyway, so when we look at Daniel 9:27, it says, he shall make a strong covenant, the Antichrist, for 7 years, and for half of the week he shall put an end to the sacrifice and the offering. He's going to storm the temple, stop the sacrifice and the offering, and demand himself to be worshipped, at the middle of this 7 years. So here we have another set of clues. Up until 2018, it made no sense to us. We kept thinking that was the time frame. But really, when we look at the words of Psalm 90, and for those who have to toil and experience Jacob's trouble, their years are 80. Okay, so that's another data point for this 2021 to 28. Now, I have another one too. It's oddly enough, this is a little bit more controversial. So when you look at the 70 weeks of Daniel 9:25, it says the angel Gabriel tells Daniel, and for some reason this is ignored. I never learned this until I was probably 45 years old, 7 or 8 years ago. I never learned this in church. This is not taught. Prophecy is ignored in the Christian churches. Jesus called his followers. He said, you guys are a bunch of fools because you are slow to believe all that the prophets have written. That's what he said to his own followers on the road to Emmaus the day that he rose from the dead. So if you're a Christian who doesn't study prophecy or you're slow to even believe it, Jesus calls you out as a fool. Now, that's not a nice thing to say to people, but it's the words of Jesus. So the angel Gabriel said, know therefore, this is important, know therefore, understand that from the going out of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, I would say this is Ezra 7 command, to the coming of the anointed one. That word anointed means Mashiach, the Messiah. To the coming of the Messiah, a prince, a leader, there shall be 7 weeks. Then for 62 weeks, it shall be built again with squares and a moat, but in a troubled time. So this is 483 years. Okay, so if you go from 457, which is the command in Ezra 7, which is an established historical date, 457 plus 483 years, it lands at 27 AD. So where do we go with this? Well, let's go and just jump off on a side path here and go back to Hosea 6:2. Now, I have studied Hosea 6:2 in the literal sense. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, that he may heal us. He has struck us down, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, he will revive us. I think it's the 2 days of darkness, 2 literal days, 24-hour days. And on the third day of darkness, he will raise us up that we may live before him and have that big party that's spoken about in Revelation 7, where that great multitude is standing in front of the throne. And the man tells John that these are they who came out of the great tribulation, which is seal 6. But there could be a secondary meaning, a figurative meaning, because we learn in Psalm 90, back to Psalm 90 again, it says this, for 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. So essentially 1,000 years in the sight of God is like a day. And we learn that, Peter speaks about that. But I wanted to use the Psalm 90 reference because of the first part of this. So here we go, 1,000 years is a day. So after 2,000 years, he will revive us. And on the third day, the beginning of the 1,000-year reign, he will raise us up that we may live before him. So what do we do with this information? 27 AD? Well, I haven't done a video on this, but I have studied the ministry of Jesus. I've looked at a few other people who've studied this too, and I completely agree that if you read the first 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you come away with seeing that the ministry of Jesus was but a year long, Passover to Passover. And if you read the Gospel of John, there is an extra reference to a feast. And people have put the word Passover in front of that feast. It's in John chapter 6. If you remove that word Passover, the Gospel of John only has 2 Passovers. And in the earliest translations of John, that word Passover is not used in there, and it's just referred to as a generic feast. So it's my opinion that the ministry of Jesus lasted 1 year. So that would mean that the Passover where he was crucified here, and where we had the Resurrection Sunday and Pentecost, was actually AD 28. So he left the planet, he rose from the dead, ascended into heaven, sometime in May in 28 AD. So what does that mean, 28 AD? Well, if you take this 2,000 years and you add it to 28 AD, you get 2028. Here we go again. We have a third data point that points to 2028 as this time frame when the world will be revived, when he returns and sets things straight. So with that, guys, I have 2 extra data points pointing to 2028. And years ago, we weren't able to see this, but I truly believe, as it says in Daniel, that these books have been opened and these prophecies have been unsealed. So with that, guys, I'll let you go. Have a great day, and God bless you.